Hello and welcome to Coach Replay. My name is Kim Ramadan and I'm here with Cory Camp as well, co-hosting. Today we have Dr. Austin Smith with us. He is from Everman ISD and is the Director of Secondary Education. So welcome.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's great to be here. I'm excited to hopefully help those that are empowered to coach, and whether it be one person or a whole system-wide implementation. I hope that the viewers can get something from this conversation. It's really important to me and to our district, and I'm excited for the chat with you two today.
Excellent. Well, today we're talking about goals. How do we know if they're working, and how can we see if they're working? So we are going to be talking about that today. I'm really curious to start off with the presence of goal setting in your district. So Everman ISD, how do we set goals? Who is setting it? What purpose? How are you tracking it? So can you just give us a little bit of an understanding of that in your district?
Yeah, definitely. We start really with looking at the previous year and then moving forward from there. So I'll kind of give you our nosedive into the whole coaching infrastructure to answer your question. But we were left like in the post-COVID era in like the fall of 2021, where we still had some students off campus, some students coming to school like in person, and that kind of hybrid modality was like really complicated. And so we kind of looked back to see where our gaps were. And our students, of course, were chronically underperforming. I think around the world that was happening. And so what that did, though, was it allowed us to create a goal setting system from the top down. So to answer your question, though, Kim, it's like we start with the superintendent and the board. And so our board of trustees and our superintendent work together with the chief academic officer or assistant superintendent, that like tier one type of cabinet, to set goals based on the previous year. And looking at a post-COVID landscape, math was hit the hardest. I mean, I think our Algebra 1 students had performed like 9 months below their like recommended trajectory almost. And then students of color were affected even more. And then if they were economically disadvantaged, even more so. And Everman is 60% Hispanic, 30% African American, and 98% economically disadvantaged. So we were kind of left with just the scraps, so to speak. I mean, we were like the worst case scenario. So setting goals with the superintendent just helped align all of our look fors, our purchases, our bringing on of Sibme, honestly, and helped us to see that everybody needs support, not just teachers. Like administrators needed support, everybody needed support to carry the load that COVID-19 like left with us, just this mess. So long way to get there, but started with the superintendent.
I think it's so great to hear that like it is a total organization approach to that kind of guiding everything. Like you said, everything from the goals that each individual and team and department and campus would make, but then also like even just guiding your actions, like what you invest in for not just your time, but your resources.
Yeah,
what are you investing in?
Yeah, we ended up really having to, because we set goals that were aligned to overcoming like the learning loss that we were left with from the pandemic. Like we were able to only prioritize and fund and pay for like those programs that were statistically like proven to do that, which helped us sort of hit the refresh button in a way. COVID was not a positive experience by anyone's, imagination, I guess you could say, but it was helpful in a sense of it really let us sort of like tear down everything and rebuild. And that was one of the ways we did it, was what are we investing in? How are we spending our money? Because at the time, it was like even the economy was at a standstill. We didn't know how education was going to be impacted by that. So that helped us have conversations with leaders to say like, hey, is this a priority to you? Okay, if it's not, then we need to trim some of that fat, because we don't know what's going to happen.
And you said that you had really focused on math as the area in which you really wanted to see some growth. So what were your goals? Like what was the math goal that you set? And then, how did you know if it was working? Like how were you able to kind of track that? I think that's
important. So we were dealing with like on average like a 20% decrease from like the 18-19, like our last like original pre-pandemic year. With the 2021 school year, we were at like an average 20% decrease from where we were pre-COVID, and then where we were then. We luckily overcame that. So we created this whole initiative called Erase the Gap, which was focused on recovering the learning loss from the previous year, while prioritizing quality tier 1 instruction and instructional coaching for everybody. And so how we tracked that was just progress monitoring. I mean, you can get really complicated with things, but we really just went back to the basics. Honestly, we did beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, skills-based math assessments in this case, and looked for students either moving, to the left or to the right, so to speak. So how many of our students were getting that tier 1 instruction? How many weren't? Okay, then if they were moving to a tier 2, we shot for 80% of our students getting that quality tier 1 instruction. And if they weren't getting that, they were moved to tier 2. Okay, what supports do they need in the classroom at the secondary level, which I oversee primarily? Like, how can we maximize class time so that we don't have to ask students to stay, even longer in the school day? And then out of those tier 2 students, how many are moving to tier 3? And then what can we do after school to provide additional instruction? So progress monitoring was the biggest thing, Kim. Like we not that we were test heavy, but we just embedded it within the high quality instructional material curriculum that the state of Texas had given us. So there are some other things in that we can talk about if we want to go down those pathways. But the biggest thing though was focusing on two things. What are we teaching, and how do we know that it's working? Those were our two biggest questions that we wanted to have answers daily, not just, at the end of the year. No, it was like on whatever date was today. Tuesday, July 18th. What did you teach, and how do you know it worked? We wanted it to be that clear.
Well, and you and I have talked before. We've done a webinar where we talked about this idea of, we kind of use the GPS analogy, right? Like, it's great to have a good plan, a good route planned for your journey, knowing where you're starting and what your destination is. But the power of, GPS is that along the way, especially if you use like Google or Waze, which is the same as Google, but to kind of crowdsource that information, get real-time feedback in, there's, some traffic building up ahead, let's reroute you. Like, the power of that to really be able to most effectively and efficiently get to your destination is powerful. And so I hear that like built in with your beginning, middle, and end of year assessments, but then also thinking about that every single day. It's at the forefront of our mind. I think so often in education, we set a goal and then like we kind of forget it. Like, we just expect it to happen.
Yeah, because there's so much noise, right? Like we're constantly inundated as educators with new things, bright, shiny silver bullet promises, like this is going to cure all your ailments kind of thing. And that's why I wanted to say to you two today, and whomever's watching, that it really isn't that difficult if we strip away, in my experience, okay, like I'm just one person, but in my experience, it's really not that difficult once you kind of take away all the noise and focus on like those fundamentals. I mean, they're fundamentals for a reason. Taylor Swift is popular for a reason, right? Like, because she's good, you know what I mean? And so I think that that's something too, like even at the individual level, like I'm talking systems here, but like even at the individual level, like anybody can have a conversation with themselves of what am I teaching? How do I know it works? And what do I need to fill in the gaps in between that? And if we were all having those kind of conversations, or that metacognition, I guess, if you will, like, I think the world would be a better place.
Yeah. And I wonder about, and I forgot to mention, I should have at the top of this, that Austin is a really big city. And so we got really jealous.
First and foremost.
First and foremost.
Right.
I have thoughts on that as well.
Yeah. We can go there if you want.
Talk about coaching.
But no, but I was leading into that. I think that like when it comes to, because you have beginning, mid, end of year assessments, but that's not enough. We have to look at what's going on in between every day. What's the role in coaching in that? Because this is the Coach Replay, and I would love, I think our audience is like, okay, so now what do we do? Like, what do we do every day?
No, I love that.
That's the question that I wonder.
Yeah, like, so we had to give people time. Let me like kind of give you bullet points. Like we wanted to focus on lesson planning and that planning process, what that looked like, and then its execution in the classroom. And then how do we know like it was effective that day, and then what needs to be fixed or retooled with like good quality feedback. So looking at the first of those things, like with the lesson planning process, we had to give teachers time. So that was a big thing at the beginning, as we had these goals, right? And we wanted to make them visible. Like we wanted to see it happen. Like we just didn't want to talk the talk. Like we really wanted to see it. And so we had there's a balance there that has to happen. I mean, we can't just say this and then people go do the unthinkable. So we gave them time. So every tested subject we started out with, and it's since grown since then as we've like developed and gotten better at our systems, but we gave like a PLC or a planning time in addition to a conference period. So that was a big deal because we were just doing like planning 1 45-minute period or block of time a week, and then expecting, just amazing 80% high quality tier 1 instruction. That wasn't reality, right? So we had to do that. And then we had to invest in our administrators to provide quality lesson plan feedback. So that way teachers were able to actually get something out of that process that needed to be directly related to what they were doing for that week's instruction. So we asked principals and administrators to engage in the teacher prep work also. And so what that looks like is if it's a feedback meeting or a coaching session, the principal is actually engaging in that work. They're reading the selections of the text, they're answering the questions, they're creating like student exemplar responses, their success criteria, all of the things that it's really cool to see, because it's like all the things that people recommend. I mean, I know Jim Knight recommends it, and there are several others that recommend just creating a quality success criteria. So it's really neat to see it happen, but it wouldn't have happened if we didn't give time. And I didn't get out of my office to go also ladder myself down in there into the arena with them. And then, magic.
Into the arena. I hear a little Brene Brown language in there as well, which Kim and
you
I
caught
are
that.
big fans. Well, I think
Me too.
Like, I think that time piece is not always something that's kind of given, whether it's, giving myself as an individual coach who's trying to just get better at setting goals and attaining those goals with my teachers or in my own practice, or an entire organization, like giving ourselves the grace and the gift of some time to be able to really kind of do those things. What I also would love to kind of discuss and hear from you, because I know your district does this really, really well. I think Sibme is part of the platform that you use to kind of drive this work is part of this. It allows you to do this. But that idea of like that power of seeing, being able to see the goals, not just kind of, I see it on a test score, but let's talk about artifacts and evidence and how that plays a role into successful completion or even progress towards those goals.
Well, I would love to share an example with you if y'all are okay with that. So Sibme we wouldn't be able to do or pull off our coaching process without it. The tool has totally like revolutionized everything that we do as far as our coaching processes are concerned. Even lesson planning now, I mean, we've been able to leverage it so many different ways because of all of the bells and whistles that it has. But talking about like the power of seeing and looking at goals, like this is a great example. This is a huddle that I've made with my colleagues. So this is not a real huddle, like a disclaimer, but it's one that we put together because we wanted to show you sort of like what this next year is going to look like for us and how we at the district level provide support to our campus administrators at a higher level using Sibme. So we are asking principals to engage in lever 1 to start off the school year of the Effective Schools Framework, which is I think it's a national thing, but Texas has really like grabbed onto it lately as far as sort of like a checklist that if districts and campuses did, they would have, and if they checked all these boxes, so to speak, they would have an effective school. And so that's sort of our framework for coaching or being a principal manager or coaching principals. And so just right off the bat, you could see like lever 1 is strong school leadership, and this status bar we use all the time. So this is 38% of the progress complete of all of these wonderful items like within lever 1. And so what this allows us to do is campus administrators or just anybody in a school system, regardless of, what role they play, is inundated with information and things like that. We talked about it. But what this allows us to do is to set parameters on when this is going to start and when it's going to end. And we do have goals because things move quickly in an academic year for our principals to move on to another lever at the beginning of October. So if I put on like my curriculum hat or my just educator hat, I guess, I'm able to then count the weeks in between and then figure out like, how can I leverage those weeks to make sure that principals, in this case, or educators, I'll use that term, get through or complete these things so that they're doing the work of thinking and considering all of this information that act as prerequisites to the next lever that we'll move to. And so one of the things that I love about Sibme is I'm able to give them the success criteria up here in this text box. We started to link like exemplars. So Mrs. Easley, the director of elementary, and I will actually complete the work also, and then we'll give that to them up front. Like, we don't make success a mystery. We want them to see what it looks like, because how many times do you Google something just to see an example, right? Like, why are we holding that as like a secret? And so, obviously they submitted their resource here to me, and then I'm able to go in and make comments. And this is where the Sibme really just levels up, because then I'm able to make my notes and tag a framework. And what we then do is, once we're looking at the document, I'm able to check the items that are present. And so I'll show you in a little bit how we use those analytics to see and use that to inform our professional development. But I'm able to check all of these wonderful things and then tag a performance level here to see if their response was, in this case, we're able to customize these, which is great, but minimal, partial, or an appropriate response. What that then allows us to do is look and see sort of where our administrators are in the field of everything that they've got going on. And then I can choose just the framework that I need. And because we created the success criteria, we're able to then see, once these load, like the top 5 tagged most present success criteria that are within the principal's responses, and then the least 5 of what is not as consistent. Well, obviously you can do a ton of things with that information, right? Because then we're able to see, like, okay, well, our principal, there's a gap between teacher supervision, which is performing at a very high level. That's, always there. It seems like with instructional coaching, okay, how can we have a conversation to get this number back up? And then I could just rinse and repeat. And you can honestly, like we were talking about, beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, you could use it the same way. I mean, pull this information at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, however you want to do it. But then we're able to see within each of those success criteria, how is it scoring as far as its performance? Is it appropriate? Is it partially complete? Or is it minimally? So if it is present, then we get to zoom in a little bit more and see, okay, well, what are the gaps in the specific thinking related to, in this case, like teacher supervision, right? It's the same thing we would want in a classroom with our students. And so we just sort of leveraged Sibme's wonderful tools to replicate some of those diagnostic assessments that we would use in a classroom.
I mean, I think obviously as people who work for and with Sibme often, Cory and I are really happy to see all of this happening in your organization, because there are so many benefits to having a tool like this. And you've talked a lot about, we talked about setting a goal, from the top to the bottom. We talked about, how to mark progress through that goal, whether it's with your benchmarks or daily and coaching and all of this. And I think if our viewers wanted a place to start, because I think it can feel overwhelming, the things that you're saying and the years that you put into all of this like work, it's like, it might feel a little overwhelming. Where would you tell people to begin if they were like, we're not setting goals today? Where would you start? Where would you have them start?
Well, at some point, a conversation, whether it be like internally or with a committee, needs to happen of like, what are our priorities, or what is the frame that we need to look for? Like, Are we wanting to see students improve literacy? Are we wanting to decrease discipline? Like there are so many things that are in the gambit of education and it doesn't have to be like a diagnostic assessment. It could just be, these are things that I'm seeing a lot of, and I think this could help, right? Like you basically are just finding a mission for yourself for that year, and then figure out from there, like, what steps do I need to take in order to make this happen? And so that's that conversation. Then you have to make time for it. Like Cory was saying earlier, you said it too, Kim, like you can't just have this like in a vacuum. You can't just say like, oh, well, we need to improve literacy. Cool. All of education, unfortunately,
Awesome.
These are huge missions. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like nothing is ever easy. So you're going to have to make time for what is important to you and what's important to your district. However you want to cut that. And I had this on my resource that you guys could share with the viewers, but we asked principals and teachers to go through this calendar blocking activity, which is really helpful because then you can kind of see, like, how do I want to spend my time? And then as an administrator, am I spending the majority of my time, in meetings and not student culture? Okay, well, is my culture and morale low? Great. Then let's quantify that by just saying you need more green space in this case on your calendar to block out student culture times, and it just kind of walks you through those. I calendar block religiously, probably more than religiously. I don't know what that would be, but definitely more than once a week because I noticed in myself, I could hole up in my office a lot. So I have to be really aware of that, and then calendar block social time so that I'm out and present, smiling, making Taylor Swift jokes, like all of those things.
All the things.
Because people need that. We crave community and things like that. So you have to be honest with yourself, but having a good, strong calendar where every single 30-minute increment is blocked out is so powerful. I'm sure you guys have to with everything you've got to keep up with.
Yeah, of course. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to actually eat lunch, or like,
yes,
we absolutely do. I mean, like those self-care things too. No, this is great. And I feel like we, Cory and I follow up with a lot of content through our social media channels. So we will definitely make sure that people have access to this. Because it is really great. What are your priorities, and then how does your schedule reflect that? Is something that we've talked about already this year, but we will continue to have this conversation because it's so important. Yeah.
Well, and look, you guys know as well as I do, like things are going to happen, but it's the matter of like friends, like how can you pivot, because bombs are going to go out, whatever, like it's going to happen, but you need to know whenever that time does become available again, where to go back to. And we have a bookmark in a book for a reason, like it's because you're not going to be able to keep up with 600 pages or whatever, some people more than that. But
love that. Okay. So final question, Austin, favorite Taylor Swift song that is related to coaching?
Ooh, that's a good one.
This is so good.
I didn't even prepare you for this.
This is so good. Okay.
I'm gonna need you to ad lib on this a little bit.
Okay, I got it.
Go.
It's gonna be Mirror Ball from Folklore, because that song is all about like, I will be whoever you need me to be, which can sometimes be toxic. But in this case, in a coaching role, I will be whoever you need me to be. We're gonna role play this thing out. I will be a mirror for you, no matter how many different pieces I need to show. So in a coach, you kind of need to be like a mirror ball, because there are so many different pieces of you that people are going to see. Oh, love it.
So
I love
you
that.
Nailed it.
Good job. That was a great question.
Yes, you nailed it. I just came out of nowhere with that one.
I love
but good
it.
thing I've been
feel like
for
we
a long
need.
time.
I feel like Kim, you and I at some point this year need like a coaching playlist, like all of these great artists in different genres, and like what's the coaching song of that one? I think this is gonna be a whole new thing.
Ooh,
I love that.
Very good.
That's good.
Very good.
Austin, thank you so much for coming and sharing all of the hard work that your district has kind of taken on and really done so many amazing things with. And I love getting to see a little bit of like how you functionally do this as a district, not just big ideas, but getting a chance to see what that looks like. You use Sibme powers the Coach Replay Show, and it's a great vehicle for that. But I think like there's some really good key takeaways, which our folks can download from learn.sibme.com, or if you've signed up to get it right into your inbox, you can see some of those bullet points and some of these sample resources straight from Austin, and how to follow Austin on social media if you want to continue to connect with him. So so many good takeaways, and now a song stuck in my head. And so, yeah, I'm excited. Thanks again for joining us today.
Well, thank you guys for the opportunity. Sibme is, I'll tell anybody who will listen to me that this is not paid, but I love the program. I love the support, and it really has like changed the game for us. I mean, it's such a great product. So I hope you guys know that too, and that the work you do is really valuable, because it impacts so many different people. I can tell you 5,000 people here in Everman that it's impacted. So just thank y'all so much for everything you do.
Beautiful.
That's
Love
beautiful.
it. Let's
Yeah,
end
thank
it
you.
there. Ready, wrap. Follow us on social media. Thank you all so much for coming. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.